Welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Lotta, and today I'm going to be making Franzbrötchen. So Franzbrötchen are a traditional pastry from Hamburg, which is in the northern part of Germany. So in the last video, I made kanelbulle, which are Swedish cinnamon buns. So we're kind of staying on that trend this week, and we're going to make kind of like a German cinnamon bun. They're not really cinnamon buns, they're very different, but they give off the same vibes. Franzbrötchen are kind of like a combination of a cinnamon bun and a croissant. That's like the best way I could describe it, because you still make a yeast dough, but you layer it with cold butter, which is similar to croissants, but you still have that cinnamon sugary filling. So they're the best of both worlds. So if you want to see how to make these, keep watching the video. Now, as always, the first thing we need to do is make our yeast dough so we can get that proofing. So for that, you're going to need 70 grams of sugar, 7 grams of yeast or 21 grams of fresh yeast, 250 milliliters of warm milk, 70 grams of softened butter, half a teaspoon of salt, 500 grams of flour, and you're going to need some lemon zest. I already have some packaged up. This is about 6 grams of dried lemon zest. If you don't have any lemon zest, that's okay too. It's not that big of a deal, but it just adds a bit of flavor. Now we're gonna start by activating our yeast. So I'm just gonna add a part of my sugar and part of my milk. Now, while the yeast is blooming for 10 minutes, we can already add the rest of our ingredients into our mixing bowl. Been around 10 minutes and our yeast is looking very bubbly and gross. So this is exactly how we want it to be. I'm simply gonna add this into my mixing bowl with the rest of my ingredients. Now, as always, I'm gonna use my KitchenAid to knead this together for about 5 to 6 minutes. You really wanna make sure that everything is incorporated and it comes to like a nice smooth dough. Now, depending on the temperature of your ingredients and the type of flour you use and all those shenanigans, you might have to add a tiny splash more of milk to get that nice smooth dough ball. But I would suggest not adding any additional milk for the first few minutes because it does take a while for the flour and everything to incorporate and to get a nice dough ball. So just keep an eye on it, and if it doesn't look like it's coming together at all, just add a little bit more milk or water. But yeah. And as always, you can also knead this together with your hands or with a hand mixer, but I just prefer using my KitchenAid because I have both of my hands free and I can do other things in the meantime. Now, I like kneading my dough together once with my hands just to make sure I have a nice round and smooth ball. And because our dough has a lot of fat in it, you really don't need to dust your surface with any flour. But if you find that it's sticking too much, you can always dust your surface with a little bit of flour. This is like my favorite part about making anything with like a yeast dough. It's just so fun to knead it together. But I can't imagine doing this like all day long. I feel like my wrist would give out immediately. Gonna put this seam down into my big bowl. We're gonna cover this with either some plastic wrap or a kitchen towel, and then we need to let this proof for 1 to 2 hours or basically until it's doubled in size and it's looking nice and fluffy. Now again, depending on where you are and how cold or how warm it is, your dough might need a little bit more proofing time or a little bit less. So if it's warmer, your dough is gonna rise a little bit faster, and if it's cold, your dough is just gonna proof a little bit slower. Now I usually like to preheat my oven just a tiny bit, just for like a minute or two, just so that there's a little bit of warm air in it. And I'll put my dough into the oven to proof, and that'll basically cut down my proofing time to like an hour. Again, I'm just impatient, so I don't wanna wait 2 hours for my dough to proof because I've got other things to do. But if you do have the time and you kind of just want to forget your dough, you can always just leave it out on your counter to proof like that. So our yeast dough is almost done proofing. So at this point, I'm going to prep our cold butter, which we're going to need for layering. So I have 200 grams of very cold butter, and I'm just going to cut this into nice thin slices. Now that our butter is nice and thin, we're gonna put it back into the fridge to make sure it's super cold. It's been just over an hour, so we're ready to start rolling out our dough. I'm just gonna flour my surface a little bit to make sure nothing sticks. We want to roll this out to a rectangle that is 40 centimeters by 25 centimeters. So to make sure you get it into a rectangular shape, if you readjust the edges of your dough while you roll it out, you can try and keep it as rectangular as you can. We're going to layer our cold butter on half of our dough, and you want to keep a tiny bit of room on the edges so that we can pinch the edges closed. Now we basically just pinch the edges together to make sure that none of the butter can squeeze out. So we're gonna roll it out one more time to 30 centimeters by 45 centimeters. Now it might be a little bit hard because the butter is inside of it, but just give it your best shot. We're going to fold this over one more time, and then this needs to go into the fridge to chill for another 30 minutes. Now before we roll out our dough one last time, we're going to mix together 1 tablespoon of cinnamon with 200 grams of sugar. Once all of your sugar is covered in your cinnamon, we can set it aside. We're going to roll out our dough one last time, and you want it to be a big rectangle that is 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. It took a lot of work, but we got it to be 50 by 50 centimeters. It's so big it doesn't even fit on camera. So at this point we can start with our filling. So I'm just brushing the surface with a bit of water. So this is just gonna act like a glue for our cinnamon sugar. Now once everything is covered with a thin layer of water or a little glue, we're going to evenly sprinkle our cinnamon sugar all over it. It almost would have been easier just to use a spray bottle and spray the surface with the water, but I didn't think of that. It's too late now. This just smells so good already. So at this point, we're going to simply roll this up like we would with regular cinnamon buns. So I'm just gonna start here on this edge and fold it over, and then slowly make my way towards the other end, trying to keep them a little bit tight. Now, regular cinnamon buns would just be cut into equal-sized little circles, but these ones are a little bit different. We're actually going to be cutting them diagonally so that they almost look like triangles. So you have one end that's a little bit narrower, and the bottom part is going to be a little bit wider. Now, because the ends are a lot thinner than the middle part, I usually like just to cut them off and not bake them because they're not gonna bake as even. But if you want, you can bake all of your roll. Just know that the end pieces are gonna be a little bit more dry and a little bit more well done. Okay, that all being said, let's just get these cut up. I'm just gonna put my end pieces to the side, and if I have room on my baking tray, I'm just gonna throw them on. Now comes the weird part. You're gonna want to find something that is round. So I usually use the back part of a wooden spoon. So basically what happens when we squeeze into our dough, the sides kind of come out a little bit and it gives this butterfly wing effect, which is really beautiful when it's done baking. So we're gonna go ahead and do that with every single one of our little doughs. And you wanna go in pretty deep until the sides squeeze out. And then just transfer it onto your baking tray. Now that our Franzbrötchen are all done, we're going to chill these for another 30 minutes just to make sure that the butter gets nice and cold again, and that'll just result in a more flaky dough, which is what you want. And in the meantime, we can preheat our oven to 200 degrees Celsius or 392 degrees Fahrenheit. And just like that, our Franzbrötchen are done. Chef's kiss. Now I do find that most pastries that have a yeast dough, they only taste good on the first day, and then on the second day they're kind of like tough and not as like fluffy and light. So I found that if you microwave them for just a couple of seconds or pop them into the oven just until they get warm again, they kind of get that fluffiness back, and then they're soft again because they're warm. So that's just a little tip from me to you. So that's going to be everything for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, you can give it a thumbs up or write me a comment down below. And as always, the whole recipe is going to be in the description box as well.